and welcome to the very first episode of The Slow Rise. My name is Rianne, and if you are watching the YouTube video right now, you can see how disheveled I look. If you're not, good for you. I am currently getting the house ready for Easter, and it's a lot. Husband's family are coming over for Easter dinner on Sunday, and my family is coming into the city for Easter this weekend as well. So it's just a whirlwind of craziness in this household right now. But we need to make some bread. We need to make some buns. And I thought, what a better way to have you join in. So there's something about making bread, the patience it requires. You have to trust the yeast to kind of do its work, and that feels like the perfect metaphor for what I want to talk to you about today. So recently in my health class that I'm taking at the University of Saskatchewan, we've been diving into a book that has completely shifted my perspective. It's called What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. It's a book about trauma, resilience, and healing. But more than that, it's about understanding the ingredients that make us who we are. You're seeing me clean my kitchen right now. That's not because it was terribly messy. It's not because I needed to do it. It's because cleaning is something that helps me clean up my mind. And using this metaphor that we are, I thought it'd be good for you guys to see what the actual process is of me making bread, but also talking about trauma and resilience. So we often ask people and ourselves, what's wrong with me? What is wrong with you? When we're stressed, we're failing, and we're just, having a bad day. Sometimes you hit your leg against the leg of a chair, or you stub your toe and you go, what is wrong with me that I am just so clumsy today? But Dr. Perry suggests that the real question is what happened here? Today I am going to talk about that shift, how it connects to the science of our brains, and why my own story as an adopted person makes this feel so personal. And while I'm at it, I may as well bake bread. All right, y'all. Now that it is clean in here, it is clean in my mind, we're ready to dive in. Welcome to a day of baking. So, before we start talking about the brain, we should talk about what's going to go into this bowl. So think of a child's early life as the process of gathering ingredients. But there's a step that we can't skip, and it's proofing the yeast. Before we add the bulk of flour or the pinch of salt, we start with a little bit of water, warm water to be exact, 2 cups if you want to make this recipe. And then we need a little bit of some sort of sugar. So we're going to use honey. So in life, this is our consistency and our sweetness of connection. We take a tiny bit of yeast, if I can ever get this honey out of this bowl. Wow, that was stuck in there. Okay. Then we take a little bit of our dry active yeast. This is the spirit and potential of every child that they are born with. And we'll let that sit in the warm, sweet environment for a few minutes, and we'll come back. Okay, now it's all mixed up, and while that sits, we have to wait a little bit. So I'm going to cut that. Right. Now that it's all mixed up, we have to let it sit. And while it does so, we have to wait. In baking, this takes about 5 to 10 minutes. And honestly, this is kind of the hardest part for me. I'm a doer. I want to see the bread finished, and I want to see the results. But this waiting period is a lesson in itself. In our health course, we talked about how growth is not linear. Sometimes the most important work is the quiet work happening beneath the surface for a child or for an adult like me who's trying to heal from a stressful season. This is the period of regulation. Dr. Berry talks about how we need rhythmic, repetitive experiences to feel safe. While we wait for this yeast, we are practicing patience. We are giving the environment time to work on the ingredients. I think about my own life right now. I've been so stressed about work and school that I've forgotten how to just be. I felt low because I'm not seeing results fast enough. But just like this yeast, just because you don't see the bubbles yet doesn't mean life isn't happening. In my future classroom, I want to remember this 5-minute wait. When a student is struggling, they don't always need a lecture or a new assignment. Sometimes they just need space to proof. They need a few minutes of quiet, or a brain break, or a body break, or a mental health check-in to let their nervous system catch up to the room. And that's where we're going to cut it because I talk too fast. And then we're going to come back when the yeast is actually proofed. Look at the bowl now. See those tiny bubbles that are starting to form and it's foaming? That's the carbon dioxide being released. That's the sign of life. In a child, those bubbles are the first signs of trust. A smile, a sigh of relief, the ability to make eye contact. It's small, but it's everything. If we had rushed in and added the flour too soon, we would have smothered that tiny spark of life before it had the chance to grow. All right, now that we have our foaming yeast concoction, we can add in the rest of our sugar, which for that I am still going to use honey, about 1/4 cup, give or take. And then, oh my goodness, it does not want to come out. See? Some of the affection doesn't want to come out. Come on. Okay. There we go. And then we will add in our butter. I give those ingredients a quick mix. And then we will add in our flour. We need about 4 cups, but we'll see what happens. Do about 1 there. So as we add our flour, this is the environment and the structure of our lives. For me as an adoptee, my flour came from different places, but it's what gives the bread its body. We've added the salt. These are the challenges. In the right amount, salt regulates the yeast and makes the bread strong. But if a child's what happened to you story is filled with too much salt, too much trauma without enough honey to balance it. The dough just can't rise. It becomes dense, hard, and overwhelmed. So let's talk about the biology for a second. In this course, we looked at work by Judy Willis in How the Brain Learns. She talks about these filters in our brain, the RAS and the amygdala. Think of them like the temperature in your kitchen. If it's too cold or too hot, the bread won't rise, and the heat might kill the yeast. While we experience stress or trauma, our amygdala, the brain's alarm system, gets stuck in the on position. Dr. Perry explains that when a child is in a state of fear, their brain stays in the reactive lower centers. They are in survival mode. So as a future teacher, this hit me pretty hard. We expect students to use their thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, to learn math, social studies, English. But if that student is carrying a heavy what happened to you story, their brain is literally blocking that information. You cannot separate the learning from well-being. If the dough hasn't had enough time to proof in a safe, warm environment, it's just not going to rise. Yeah. So while we watch the dough start to rise, we'll talk about my story and the invisible backpack. This is where it gets personal for me. As many of you know, I was adopted. Even though I was lucky to be raised in a home full of love, adoption itself is a major life event. It's a disruption in the very first rhythm of life. Reading Dr. Perry's work helped me realize that the things that happen to us when we are very small, even before we have the words for them, it stays in our bodies. They become part of our sensory memory. There have been times this semester where I felt completely overwhelmed, balancing school, work, and the financial stress of just trying to make ends meet. I used to judge myself for that anxiety. I'd think, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just handle this? But now I'm learning to ask, what happened to me? I'm realizing that my brain is just trying to protect me. It's using old patterns to navigate new stresses. In a letter I wrote to my future self for class, I realized that I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be consistent. I'm learning to give myself the same grace I want to give my future students. So, if this dough hadn't risen, let's talk about how we would fix the dough when the rise hasn't gone as planned. We look at the circle of courage. This is a model by Martin and Steve Van Bokeren that we studied, and it fits so perfectly with Dr. Perry's ideas on healing. It's built on 4 pillars: belonging, mastery, independence, and generosity. Dr. Perry says that connectedness is the key to healing. For me, that belonging piece is my husband, Alexander. He is my grounding force. When the world feels chaotic, that relationship helps regulate my nervous system. In my future classroom, I want to build a mentally healthy environment. That means not just teaching health from a textbook, but practicing it. Using things like brain breaks, body breaks to replenish dopamine, or even introducing apps like Finch for small daily wins. It's about creating a space where a student's history is respected, not judged. Well, my bread is going into the oven. As I'm cleaning the flour off my hands, I'm reminded that both baking and healing require a certain amount of faith. In the kitchen, you have to trust that the yeast, even though you can't see it working, is changing the structure of the dough. You have to trust the heat of the oven to finish what you started. In my own life, and especially this semester, faith has been the hidden ingredient. When I look at the what happened to you shift, I see a call to lead with the kind of compassion and grace we were taught in my faith. Dr. Perry talks about the power of connection, and for me, that connection starts with God, extends to my personal life, and then to my future students. I've realized that being mentally healthy doesn't mean I never feel stressed or low. It means having the faith to know that those feelings don't define my worth. Like the dough, we are constantly being folded, stretched, and refined. It's a process of sanctification and growth. I've had to learn that my value isn't found in a perfect GPA or a perfectly balanced bank account, but in the fact that I am a work in progress, intentionally created and deeply loved. Okay, so we have officially had our second rise. And now we will preheat the oven and throw these babies in at 350 for about 33 to 34 minutes. See you when they're done. To my future self and anyone listening, remember that the slow rise is okay. You don't have to rush your healing. You don't have to carry your burden alone. Whether you're using an app like Finch to stay accountable or just taking a quiet moment of prayer to reset your nervous system, know that every small step is a victory. Next time on The Slow Rise, we're going to talk about the body as a temple, but not in the way you might think. We'll be discussing how movement, like a simple game of Wii Sports or a walk, can be a form of stewardship for our mental health, and how we can use rhythm and play to honor the way our brains were designed to heal. As you can see, I am taking the bread out of the oven, and it looks beautiful, even though there are a few mistakes along the way, and I'm ready to eat. Thanks for joining me, and until then, stay grounded, keep the faith, and let yourself rise at the pace you were meant to.